So welcome, everyone. Glad to see
Hello.
everybody here. Nice to have you. We're going to talk tonight about how to achieve a quiet mind. Everyone hear me, or you want me to repeat that?
I'm good.
So, there are a lot of reasons why it's good to have a quiet mind, of course. Number one is it makes us more observant. Because it's one thing to just shut your mind down, and it's another to be quiet and wide awake. So we've all had those instances where either in a car accident or taking a step off of a ladder too far, where time seems to stand still or goes very, very slowly. Now, I can remember once hitting the side of a car on a motorcycle. I was going about 35 miles an hour, and I hit the side of it, flew over the top, and I can remember everything that went through my mind, even now, like, it was a long time ago, but I can remember it vividly. Because time slows down, time slows way down. And I think that's called time dilation. And the reason it happens is because all the energy in our brain is all of a sudden focused into the present moment and what's happening. Now, we don't want to go around, running into things, creating accidents in order to achieve that kind of mental awareness, that mental focus. So we have to find ways to reproduce that, to actually create time dilation. And the best way that I have found, well, I found several ways actually, but they all have a one common beginning place, and that is relaxation. And we know that if we, when we sit in a position where our body is not stressed, and we do some deep breathing, nice inhalation, nice exhalation, and we focus our attention somewhere else, you see, instead of on the myriad number of things, a list of, things we have to do, or all the responsibilities that we have. If we can take our mind off of those things and put them on one thing, that brings our thoughts to a standstill. And as that happens, then we start to experience a wonderful sensation of inner peace, where we can actually feel like we sit down, instead of up and ready to go, moving, we actually sit down internally. And that's a wonderful feeling. It feels good. It feels really good. So, but other than feeling good, there are other very definite advantages. Number one, stress levels go down. So when we're not in so much stress, then we're able to think more clearly. Our bodies heal faster. We're more attentive to other people and other people's feelings. We notice things, It's like we get off the merry-go-round and we stand still and we look around at the world we're in, and we're able to maybe see it for the first time in a long time. Now, sometimes this can happen spontaneously, and it has a sensation of, it's as though your mind is like a radio, and the radio is turned on all the time, and somebody else is changing the channel continuously. And if you could record your thoughts over the period of an hour, say, or even a minute, really, you'd find that your mind is on a different station every few seconds. Thought here, thought there, thought over there. And that's just our normal operating procedure. So what that does is it puts us at the effect of life and not in a position of cause. So whenever we're at the effect of life, then life happens to us, and we're not really writing the script, right? We're playing catch up most of the time, trying to keep up with the multiple sensory inputs that we're getting all the time. So where's the most the most prevalent sensory input that we have is our vision. And it's quite evident if you pay attention that whenever you focus on something different, you move your eyes to something else, that has an effect on your thinking. Right? You look at the front door, a whole train of thought pulls out of the station. You turn around, you look at the kitchen, that brings up a whole new train of thoughts. You think about yourself, there's something else. You think about your kids or your friend or your spouse. All of these things will trigger different trains of thought. And it happens automatically. And which came first, the chicken or the egg, whether the thoughts came first and then you looked in that direction, or you look in that direction and then the thoughts kick into gear. I think usually it follows your eyes, right? Where your eyes are drawn, those are deeper level subconscious things going on. But those things we're not aware of anyway. So if we're prompted to look in a direction, then maybe there's a need, maybe there's usually a reason why we do, and sometimes it's just random. And so our thoughts tend to become just random. And then unless we're focused on a specific task and can narrow our focus and think about that one thing, our thoughts are all over the place. And this has deleterious effects on every part of us, because the more things we focus on, the more our attention flits from one flower to the next, the more strain, the more stress it causes on our physical organism. So we want to find ways to gain mastery over our thinking. And the best way to do that is to gain mastery over our attention. Now, there's a technique I want to introduce you to. This technique is actually for getting your cat's attention. Now, I don't have a cat right now, but I've got about 7 or 8 of them that I can regularly see out the front window. And they're all semi-feral. Some of them have homes and quite a few of them don't. So it's quite a circus, And whenever I go outside and I try to get one's attention, they look and then they're gone. They just scurry away. But the technique that I've learned is that if I go outside, stand in the driveway, and I get quiet, I just stand in one spot, I don't look at the cat. But if I look down at the pavement at one spot, the smaller the better, at one spot on the pavement at my feet, got to look down, and I let myself go into kind of a meditative state. Just get really drifty in my consciousness, just holding my eyes steady, not really looking at the spot, but just keeping my eyes there. The cats stop, they look. See, they don't run away, they're interested. The reason they're interested is that cats are interdimensional beings. They're not only aware of the physical surroundings, but they're aware on the level just above the physical. So I'm sure you probably know this about cats. So in what I do when I look at that spot, I get into that same level of consciousness that they're in, and they notice. It's almost like I appear on their radar all of a sudden. I'm not a threat, I'm one of them. kind of, So, so this is a very good way to stop your thinking. If you just take a moment, and the reason you want to look down is because the eyes are relaxed when you look down. If your eyes are open and you're looking straight ahead or up, it takes some effort to do that. But if your eyes are open and you just let them relax, they just naturally look down. So that's what you're trying to achieve here is the relaxation. And you just look at a spot on the floor and let your mind just kick your mind out of gear, relax your mind, but keeping your eyes steady, locked on to this one spot. Let yourself breathe, because that kind of focused attention sometimes can cause you to tense up. So you want to drop your shoulders, let yourself breathe, and just look at the spot. When you do that, you'll find that your thoughts just come coasting in to a stop. So, what good is it? Well, aside from all of the health benefits of being able to give your body a break, so because thoughts will generate subconscious responses, action, fight, flight, freeze, all those different things. No, regardless how small and seemingly insignificant, every thought bears with it a physical response. So if you turn off the thinking, then your body finally can exhale and settle in and just relax. And a relaxed body that's also awake and ready for action, but at rest, is a healthy body and a body that's responsive to actual needs, not just mental needs. So in meditation, having a quiet mind is really important, because unless your mind is quiet, you won't be able to hear the subtle messaging that you'll be receiving when you're in that receptive state that we call meditation. You might ask a question, but if your mind is continually talking, then you won't hear the answer, or you won't feel the feeling that is being conveyed to you. Because we don't always think in thoughts, right? Sometimes we think in feelings. So if we go into meditation and we're focused on a particular subject, or maybe we're just elevating our consciousness for the sake of worship, the sake of being present with God, then if our mind is quiet, then we're more receptive. We might actually hear or see or sense what's being given to us in our seeking. So a quiet mind is very important. And even in our day-to-day activities, say you're you're at work, or you're at the grocery store, or you're out running errands, getting gas in your vehicle, whatever it is, a quiet mind is an observant mind. So you notice things if you're awake, you see. And it's one thing to have a quiet mind and going within and detaching from external sensory stimuli. It's quite another to quiet your mind and be alert to the actual stimuli that's coming in. Because when our minds are active, when our thoughts are just running along, everything we see, we will see through a particular filter. And, we're all aware of unconscious bias. We have all kinds of them, all kinds of biases. whether something is safe or whether it's dangerous, whether something is good, whether it's bad, whether it's, going to give you some advantage or create a disadvantage for you. Whatever frame of mind whatever filter you're looking at the world through is going to determine what you see. So as we quiet our minds, and especially doing it on a routine, routinely, like when we do our meditation, then as the mind gets quiet, we become naturally more observant throughout the day. It has a carryover effect. Just like if you get into shape physically, that has an effect across all dimensions of your life. You feel better, you function better, you think better, you're more communicative, everything if you're in better shape. So this is being in shape in your mind. And in order to do that, you must learn to manage your thoughts, to manage your thinking. And that begins with a blank slate, right? You want to be able to have a 0 point. You want to be able to turn it off and reset, turn it back on. So that, so that's what that person was saying or is saying. Or oh, I didn't notice that there's a new store in the mall. I wonder what that is. Let's go check it out. And otherwise we drift through life and we don't notice things because we're shoving all of the new stimuli out and just going on autopilot, expecting to see what we've always seen before. So by doing a little exercise like this and then integrating it, incorporating it, bringing it into your everyday awareness has tremendous advantages because it wakes you up in all kinds of ways, both in the external expression of your life and in the internal awareness of what you're feeling. What you're feeling is, it's like flying an airplane, right? Especially like if you're flying in the dark or you're flying in cloudy weather, in the fog, you can't see out the windshield. All you have are your instruments. Well, as we fly through life, many times we're in the fog. We can't really tell what's going on around us. It's hard to interpret what we hear on the news or what we see on the internet or what we get at work from people. All of those things start to crowd in and we lose our ability to interpret what's actually going on because we're too busy trying to see through the fog. Instead, we need to pay attention to our instruments. We need to be aware of what our internal gauges are telling us. Can't do that if you're always thinking. You have to pay attention. And paying attention and being quiet are like two sides of the same coin. So, as you know, I teach a class on meditation, and part of the technique in that method of meditation, I call it quiet mind. I have you think about where you are located in your being. Where, if your vehicle was a car, where are you sitting? Where's the driver's seat? And that, for most people, for most of us, is like right in the forehead or maybe in our eyes. That's where our thoughts tend to get congested. We get focused and everything gets bunched up here, and everything we see, that constitutes our world. So if we move our consciousness out of here and move it to an area where there is no thinking, because this is the prefrontal cortex, right? That's where the most thinking goes on. That's the executive faculty, the decision making and observation and all of that, the evaluating. So if we move our consciousness back into a different part of the brain, say all the way in the back of the head, all of a sudden that mental chatter starts to quiet down, because the mind is saying, what's going on? Why are we no longer in the driver's seat? You see? So we move our consciousness back to the back of our head, and then maybe even 3 or 4 inches behind the back of our head. And not just to look at it in that way. It's not like turning around and looking to see the back of our head. We back up into it. And by doing that, we disengage the visual cortex. And as we disengage the visual cortex, then we keep the eyes from picking up different cues, which then kick into gear the thinking process, because eyes and thought are very closely connected. When we disengage that process and we enter into feeling, a whole new world opens up. That's the world of our internal landscape. So we back up into it, we become aware of it, like a field of energy that's right behind us. And as we do, the thinking just flatlines. Everything gets quiet. So, can you stay there all the time? Not usually, because we always have demands. We always have things we not only think about, but that we have to think about. You get up and walk into the other room. You have to think about that to some degree. But if you go there and touch that base, you see, you make a connection in mind. All you have to do is make that connection, and you start setting up a new pattern. And the more you go to that connection, the stronger that pattern gets. The stronger the pattern gets, the easier it is to access it. So with a little bit of practice, you do these simple little techniques, then you can be anywhere, doing anything, and turn it on, just like that. Just turn it on, and you get quiet. You get observant. You can hear, and then you know what to say, right? You have less of an agenda. You're more responsive and less reactive. So you can actually be with people and not always have in a conversation waiting for the other person to stop talking so that you can start talking. See, instead, you can really tune in to what they're saying and then respond to that. You see, and then actually have a conversation and not talk past each other. See, having a quiet mind is probably one of the most important spiritual skills that you can develop. Okay, now I'm going to stop here, and I'd like your feedback, like any questions or comments you have on what we've talked about so far.
I totally felt the meditative way you described staring down at the ground. That was really very helpful. And I'm going to use that because it really takes you down and out of your thoughts pretty easily. So thank you for that. Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
See, a lot of these things are remarkably easy, surprisingly easy.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good way to describe that. Yeah.
I take it as what Jesus meant when he said the kingdom of heaven is at hand, which means it's right within your grasp. You don't have to go to an ashram. You don't have to climb a mountain. You don't have to join a monastery. You don't have to do anything like that. It's right here. It's immediately available. Kingdom of heaven is within us. We don't have to go anywhere. We just have to know what to do.
I'll get the drops of Jupiter out of my hair.
The drops of Jupiter.
It's a
It's a
song.
Oh, oh,
I want to,
oh,
I want
yeah.
to, just say yes to what Teresa just said. Same. Incredibly effective, useful, simple, practical, and most importantly, effective. And what comes to my mind is the magician key in the tarot, where he's literally pointing his finger down and looking down. And when you were describing the cats, the very specific point. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. And if you try it, if you really engage with the exercise, you'll find that the eyes can barely stay still. They want so badly to move away from the spot, and you'll find that they move, yes, exactly, Wes, that rapid eye movement. But if you really focus and you gently, not forcing it, but just gently keep them on that one spot, then they gradually calm down. But it takes effort, and it's so easy. And oh, the other thing I've noticed in doing it is that you'll shift into peripheral vision. You see, it's almost like the eyes say, okay, so you're not going to let me move. All right, I'm going to expand. So you have to not let that happen either. You want to keep your, bring the peripheral in and really, truly focus on the one spot. The mind is very tricky. It wants to do what it always does, which is think and look and go from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. Yeah, Bill.
It reminds you of how that focus can apply to so many things in life. For me, it was if you're doing something, let's say catching a wave, they tend to narrow you down and focus. And that's good, right? So some people, like I said, catch waves. Some guys paint. The technique is great, whatever works for you, I guess. I don't know, but I kind of understand why we as humans like to sometimes have these things uh, that focus us, even for a short term. I'm not saying they're all good for us, but they tend to grab us and get us focused into some sort of neutral zone, so to say, where there's nothing but that moment. You know, like I did some skydiving years ago. Talk about something focusing, right? Whew, uh, you know, but that's what I'm saying. It's interesting again what um, things do, what seems to give us that focus, but having a daily regiment is probably more uh, better for us in a sense, I guess, rather than whatever it is. That's all I'm saying. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
right.
can't focus right now.
I know,
Can't
right?
focus, man. Wait a minute.
Well, the thing is, if you try to do it, then it becomes strenuous, and it can easily lull you into kind of a hypnotic stare, and that certainly isn't the point. So we do it at specified times. We take it into meditation, or we do it as a scheduled spiritual exercise, and then we let the residual effect of it grow over time, so that it becomes it's much easier to notice when our thoughts start scanning the horizon and changing every few seconds. And then we can rein them in a little bit and focus on what we're doing. So you want to don't get mesmerized by it. Don't get stuck like a deer
Like a
in the headlights.
conscious focus, like you're aware of it, but
Right.
you're aware that you're not thinking too much. Is that
Yes.
what you want to put it? Okay, I
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah, when I had my business, I would lay awake at night thinking about some problem that I was working out, trying to solve it, and I enjoyed that, a little bit of engineering, a little bit of how to set up tools and how to do one stage of the process that was giving me problems, just regular problem solving. But that will actually get in the way and prevent um, intuition from kicking in. And because when we work on problems uh, and then let go of them, they don't just go out our ears, they sink down into the subconscious, and the subconscious starts working on them. Especially as you go to sleep at night. If you have something that you need to figure out, but you have to go to sleep, you just set it up and let it go, and then go to sleep. And then that sinks down into the subconscious mind. It works on it. And then the next day, or sometimes right when you wake up, the answer to the problem, the solution is right there, just comes easily, right? Bubbles right to the top because your subconscious mind has worked it out. But if you're always thinking about it, the subconscious, which has far greater intelligence for problem solving than the conscious mind has, I mean, exponentially more, you'll never give it the opportunity to figure the solution. So it's a habit. It's a habit of mind that we want to get into. We want to do it when we do it, and then, to do like the exercise. And then when we're not doing it, let it go and engage with what we need to do. And then over a course of days, weeks, months, you'll just more and more have greater presence of mind and better able to live and function in the present moment. And if there's anything that constitutes being awake, it's being present in the present moment.
I have a thought on that. Just to bounce this off of you. But I find it interesting that there has to be this focus on a point, this very small point. And it's definitely a pattern that we see, Christ talking about the narrow path and just how everything it seems to have a lot to do with polarity and how we find that very fine center, like the symbol of the sun, kind of shows the nature of this concept, it seems, because the sun has that center point to it. And even the magician key you mentioned has, I know this is not a tarot class, but Eli said it. So the magician key has the figure 8 on the top, which has that center, mediating. It's helpful for me to understand the pattern of it so that I can have like a matrix kind of visual to see.
Yeah.
But have you ever thought about it in terms of polarity before?
Oh, sure. What, first of all, looking at the spot on the floor, the primary purpose of that is to bring your eyes to a standstill, to stop the physical motion of your eyes. Because as your eyes move, every time your eyes move, you stimulate thought. There's some linkage there that causes that to happen. So by focusing on one spot, you bring that to a stop. The Hindu sage Patanjali, he his definition of yoga, and they asked him what yoga is. He said, yoga is the intentional stopping of the spontaneous activity of the mind stuff. In other words, the mind, the thinking mind, runs automatically. And so it's taking that automaticity and bringing it under our control and bringing it to a halt. And the technique of looking at a spot, that's just one way, right? That just helps us achieve that. But as to your question, as to the spot itself, yeah. If we focus on an exterior spot, say something on the wall, or maybe, like if you look at the corner up that way, where the two walls and the ceiling come together, if you were to focus on that part of the room that you're sitting in, and really, really focus on it and kick your mind out of gear and just let your attention focus on that and that alone, you would find that a point of convergence that would draw your attention tighter and tighter and tighter into an infinitely small spot, at which point an event occurs, which is you poke through. You come out into a whole nother domain of consciousness. When we do that in meditation, we go inside and we focus on that same spot on the inside of us. We find the center of our being. And we have to back up into that, because as long as we're looking for it, it doesn't matter if we're looking with our eyes out here or in there, you're still looking. So, and looking generates that activity, keeps the mind ruffled. So if you disengage the visual, just let it go all together and feel your way into backing up into your inner being from the source, you see, because we're streaming into the world. We don't know, as I'm speaking my words, I'm not composing them. They are streaming through me. It's like I'm ChatGPT, right? I'm just a large language model. That's a little humbling when you stop to think about it, because it's too much machine-like, right?
Mm.
And the one thing that human beings do not like to think is that they're some kind of machine. That's too devastating to the ego. We like to think we're in charge, like we're running the show. And when most often we're just on autopilot. And the words we speak, where are they coming from? Where did they come from? So we follow the stream upstream. We get a sense of ourselves streaming out into the world like the radiant beings that we are. Well, where's all that radiance coming from? Where's its point of origin? Meditation is finding that place. You see, and that place is God. That's the best name we have for it. And it's too big to define. All we know is we're just kind of inching our way, backing up more and more into that. And the more we back up into it, everything in the external world starts to get dimmer and dimmer and just fade out of view altogether. Then we're in a whole different spot. And that spot, Jesse, that's like an event horizon. You see, that it's like here's a good contemplation. Imagine you have a sphere, something about the size of maybe a soccer ball, but it's a sphere. It's a nice polished, maybe a glass that's opaque, but there's a little hole in it. And you look into that hole, you're looking into the sphere. So you go into the inside of the sphere, and in there, the inside is bigger than the outside. You can imagine going into something small, but once you're in there, it's actually bigger than the space you're in now. Still bounded, still the inside, but it's bigger on the inside. And get the feeling of that. When you go within, you're going into a tinier and tinier and tinier spot within yourself, but then it opens. See, it opens. It's opening behind you and all around, but that's where it happens. It happens behind you. And then you realize, oh, all of this that I'm so caught up in all throughout the day and even now, that's all out here. That's all an external phenomenon. That's not where I am streaming from. That's not the source. The world is not my source. The world does not tell me who I am. You see? So as you go within, you want to disengage the visual. You're not looking, you're sensing. And you sense that like as though there were a heat lamp on your back. You don't have to look at that. You can feel it on your back. So you go into that feeling and you become one with the source of that energy, and you keep going within and within and within, farther and farther and farther until it happens. You break through. You can't force it. You can't even determine when that will happen. But it will happen if you keep at it. And when it does happen, it almost seems like it happens by accident. Just like the Fool in the tarot, what we see in that card where the young person is walking towards a cliff, he's going over the cliff. Yeah, but he's not aware of it. He doesn't know that's what's going to happen. Thus, an accident. And the sages who put that book of wisdom together, that visual roadmap, they had the experience themselves. And so that's how they depicted it. And when we look at that, we get, oh, that's how it happens. It comes, like Jesus said, like a thief in the night, in an hour when you do not expect. See, so there's this accidental quality to it. And all of that is just to keep the ego in line because we cannot do it ourselves. We can set it up so that it happens, but we cannot make it happen. That's the nature of enlightenment. And all the great teachers, they all say that exact same thing. You cannot make it happen, but sit your ass down and meditate. You see? What you do is you become accident prone.
I'm already accident prone, so got that
Yeah.
going for me.
Got that going for you.
Can I add something? Jesse's question. I was going down a different path, but Jesse's question stimulated something, and then you kept using terms that relate to what I was seeing. So at one point in time, I did installed cable, and so the concepts and ideas of information moving upstream and downstream, particularly for like internet service, for example. And one of the things that I learned about signal moving through a line is the higher the frequency. So in other words, the greater the peaks and valleys, the greater the signal loss. So in 100 feet, a high frequency would lose, I'm just pulling numbers, but let's say they lose 10 dB. But a low frequency that doesn't have your highs and peaks and valleys might only lose 2 decibels in that same amount of space. And so we're really speaking about bandwidth. And if you take the high frequency and you stretch it out a straight line, it's going to actually be much longer. That information traveled a much greater distance than this did. And that's why the signal loss is actually equal per linear foot that the information travels itself, not the straight line. And so I say that to go back into you're focusing on a single point, and to tie in the inner and the outer, right? And so if we're using the outer to kind of manipulate and understand the inner, or to direct the inner, if you will, the idea is to take this really large bandwidth, right? And if we think two-dimensionally, it's this line, but if we think three-dimensionally, it's a sphere moving through space, creating a pipe-like, tube-like situation, right? And so if we're at this very scattered bandwidth and our perception is very wide, our internal operating is the same, right? So we're taking in a massive amount of information and trying to just no. And so the point that like I'm kind of going with what Jesse was saying is really what you're doing is you're trying to narrow your bandwidth to
Mm.
a single point.
Mm.
And again, three-dimensionally speaking, it would be a smaller sphere, right? Not a smaller bandwidth or not a dot, but actually a sphere. And what that's doing is it's putting you in a place of being more like the true power of energy, right? The true energy is such a tight vibration that it would be a straight line, right? There
Yeah.
is no up and down. All those up and downs and all of that bandwidth is created by the fractaling that you're speaking of, going, from big to smaller, and or um, uh, the reflection of that straight line light getting caught, right? Reflecting off all these parts. And so the closer, the narrower the bandwidth, the more powerful your thoughts, your actions, your energy become, and the further they reach before they dissipate. So the greater impact you can have on your environment as a whole. So as you go narrow, your environment goes wide. So you have the the balancing of it. If one thing occurs, the other has to, right?
Right.
And so you going narrow creates a capacity for you to have a greater impact on a larger environment. And so the narrower and the narrower and the narrower, the quieter you make your mind, the quieter, the stiller you can become while still being alive, by still walking in life.
Right.
The greater
Right.
impact you have on the whole. So
You know,
I'm gonna
that it's
stop
kind
there.
of universally accepted that a person who is focused on what they're doing and has that singular attention, that person has greater presence and more charisma as a result, and more effect on their environment. They become a point of gravitation where they have gravitas, right? And they become the center around which everybody else wants to rotate, revolve around. They naturally become leaders, if only in the moment. So the quieter we get, and like you say, the quieter we get, then the stronger the signal. And everyone is just naturally going to tune into your signal, because you're the one point of coherence in a chaotic world. You're the one point of certainty. That's why, political leaders or church leaders or any kind of person in the position of leadership, the more focused they are on the core mission of the institution, people will just naturally gravitate around them and look for guidance. You see, because the signal is clear. It's like a homing signal. Everybody knows where to orient themselves in the enterprise. You see, so it's very important, if you're in a position of leadership, to stay on point, to stay on message, because the message is the signal. And you can't do
Something
that unless, yeah,
I was just gonna say something I noticed is the narrower I get my bandwidth, the less personal the information feels, right? Like when I
yes,
first started this
yes,
journey, it was like my info, oh, look what I know, look what I found, look what I want to share. But the
Right.
more work that I've done, the more it's gotten into like, this is everybody's information. Or, I mean, really for me, it's more like everybody is me. So we share all this information, but like still it's less personal. It's not my information.
Yes, yes, that's so important too, because you know we see what happens when a person in that position takes that personally, or if their main signal is their limited sense of self and not the mission. You see, if it's all about them, that's going to be a problem because it's unsustainable because as individuals we're so limited in what we have to offer. But when, like as you say, Wes, if we're focused on information in that impersonal way, there's like a feedback loop because, well, just like in this class, I'm leading the class, but I'm being directed by you, by your receptivity and what's coming up for you. And you know, we've all been in lectures or classes where somebody's trying to push a point without that kind of feedback, and it gets really boring. You know, it's dead. It doesn't have any life. So yeah, it's a lesson in humility because why? We're decreasing, we're getting smaller and smaller ourselves, and as we decrease, it increases. The signal gets bigger, stronger. So that's, you know, that's called getting out of the way. Now, as a counterpoint to that, and not to argue the point, but just as an interesting counterpoint, is that sometimes you have, if you have a person who has a very strong personality, you know, they're generals in history, you know, people that are larger than life. And at their core, they have the message or the signal that is divine in nature because it doesn't originate with them. It's really coming from a higher place, but they assume a role of leadership so that they can be the vector for that signal. In other words, you take on a role, you take on the leadership role for the sake of the message. And then such people can look like huge egomaniacs. And the only way you can tell the difference, whether you're dealing with a narcissist or a megalomaniac or even a sociopath, is as Jesus said, by their fruits you will know them. What kind of energy, what kind of activity do they generate? You know, what are their policies like? What are the actual metrics of their career? You see, what did they accomplish? And what didn't they accomplish? And people who are narcissistic or sociopathic, they tend to drop out early because people figure out what they're doing. And they say, okay, I've had enough of you. You see, and they go looking for a cleaner, clearer signal, one that's not a cul-de-sac, one that doesn't dead end with the personality of the person who's doing it. You see, so we have to always be attentive and not just if somebody's larger than life and really puts themselves forward, you have to ask why. Why are they putting themselves forward? Is it to advance themselves, or is it to advance the message? You see, it's a very important point of distinction. And you can't be too quick to judge about that. And the only way you can tell really is to look at the record. What actually is getting accomplished by that person. You know, the easy example for me anyway, because I love the movie, is Patton, General George Patton in the Second World War. Everybody in the upper echelon hated him because he just would go off on his own, and he was this ultra urbane, sophisticated, highly educated, very intelligent guy who was also this brutal warrior and commander. And they didn't like him at all because their first go-to was always, well, he's just an egotist. and he gets a lot of people killed. But historians, when they look back at what he actually did, was he saved a lot of lives, both on the American side and on the German side. Because of the speed and decisiveness of his action, nothing was drawn out. And the more you draw out a war, the more people die. So he got in and, it's like ripping off the Band-Aid. He was able to save a lot of lives. So we have to be judicious in our judgment of such people and not just write them off because they seem to have a big, or even if they do have a big ego, because sometimes it takes a big ego to have that kind of public presence to draw people into unified action.
Hey, Michael,
Just a thought. Yeah.
but hasn't that been kind of like the bane of the world's existence from the get? Was, like I was trying to state earlier, it's almost inherent in us. We want that focus. Like I said earlier, the example was some event or sport or something you'd like to do. Um, so we naturally want that. Then you have these leaders who kind of know that. Whether it's good or bad intention, hard to say, but there's a lot of bad out there throughout history. So I guess um, we need more people to be more focused on their own, I guess, clarity, so to say,
Right.
and have the wisdom to see, well, this guy's full of you know what, and this one isn't. This guy's selfish. This one is girl, guy. I'm sorry, just whatever, Um, Again, I think it's built into us to want that,
Right.
by
Right.
design, correct? We want to have that focus. Some are not strong enough to get it on their own, so they seek it somewhere else, correct?
Mhm.
Just the point I'm trying to put out there. That's all, buddy.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's difficult. It's not easy. I think it was Franklin or Jefferson or somebody said that democracy is not suited for anything but a very educated society. You have to be really sharp to live in a democracy because it takes, full participation. But everybody likes a good leader because we know that nobody can do everything. So we need an administrator to herd the cats because everybody's got their own individual focal point, but we all rely on a person who oversees it, but they oversee it for us. We don't behave for them. You see, that's government of the people, by the people, for the people. We elect our administrative officers for the sole purpose of coordinating our efforts, on a larger scale. But they have to be accountable, and we have to be smart enough to know when they're not doing their job, right? So that's an intelligent, informed electorate. That's why freedom of speech is so important. Because if you curtail freedom of speech at all, you see, that's too easily co-opted by the very kind of negative leader that we're thinking of. If somebody can control what we are able to say in public, then that just all the power accrues to them, and we lose the government of, by, and for the people. Then yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, we revert to a feudal system.
Yes, but I think an important point to that is when you silence anyone's expression, you lose what the greater wisdom that's able to express itself through each unique soul and individual. And yeah, the collective wisdom is not able to express itself and to the degree that benefits more and more, or the whole, right?
Right. And that wisdom, it's important to note, is not dependent on one's intellect or IQ.
Exactly.
Wisdom is not dependent on that.
Exactly.
Because everybody knows what's right from wrong.
Yeah.
And even if we can't understand a fine point of geopolitics, we know what we feel. But if we get caught up in, if we try to intellectualize it and we don't have that kind of training or information to help us come to an intelligent summation of the problem, then that's all we have is, what does it feel? You know, what's the feeling behind all of it? And it's either a yes or a no, and that you have to be true to. And the more you're true to that, then the more your intellect develops along those lines, and you actually get smarter if you're true to your innate wisdom. If you're true to your deepest, and not your emotions. This is a very big distinction here. You can't rely on your emotions, because we are emotionally reactive to anything that's jarring, right? So we have to increase our ability to be objective, and this gets back, of course, to how we manage our thinking. We need to up our ability to be objective so that we can get in touch with our feelings and not just react. See? Because feelings precede any kind of emotion and reaction. It's like feeling, emotion, reaction. But when we react, we're usually reacting just to the emotion, not to the feeling.
Are the feelings equated to the instrument panel in the car?
Yeah.
Or the
Or
plane? Rather?
right, right. What's actually happening, you see? If you're in an airplane and your gauge says you're upside down, that's the fact of the matter. But how you feel about that, what your emotional reaction is a whole different thing, right? So are you going to fly the plane, or are you going to be emotional about it? Yeah, it's a good point. So we took a nice little detour there. See, we put our attention onto politics, or, you know, our social contract. And but I think you see how it applies, right? Because that's what we're dealing with, especially when we get together and we try to work together as in a greater society. It's a very complicated thing to do. Emotions can run high. But what are you going to do? Are you going to be led by your emotions, or are you going to get quiet and back away from reaction and really then turn within and get in touch with your actual feeling about what's going on?
I thought of something kind of cool when you were talking about that sphere analogy,
Yeah,
when you said you look inside that tiny hole, and then when you look inside, the whole thing expands and into it's infinite, essentially,
yeah,
seemingly. And it's almost seems like when you hold that sphere in your hands, you're holding the outside walls of your world. Like, normally you would think to put your hands outwards like that, but it's really kind of like the reverse of that.
it is, isn't it? You're right. Yeah. Yeah. We have our own constraints. We constrain it. We're not pushing it out. We're really holding it in.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Is it kind of like,
It's kind of
the cage opens from the inside kind of thing?
Yeah.
We hold the key, we're in the cage, it's our choice to open that door, in a sense, correct?
Yeah. Bill, are you familiar with the story of the Chronicles of Narnia?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
right.
And what was the gateway to the other world? It was that tiny little cabinet in the bedroom, the wardrobe. They opened up, they got inside that tiny little space and pushed the clothes aside, and there the woods and an entire world opened up. See, C.S. Lewis was a mystic. And he had this experience. That's why he told that story the way he did. Because it's exactly that. It's going into a tight space that opens up into a very, very large space. And that's what we do. When we withdraw our attention from the sensory input and we start to go within without engaging the mind, but just only the attention, you see, only our awareness, no content, just the awareness, aware of itself. and you start to seek the source of that awareness, and you back up into it and back up into it, then you're gonna pop through. It's gonna happen. And it doesn't, here's another thing that a lot of spiritual teachers will tell you, that this process takes a long, long, long time, decades, even lifetimes. And it's not true. You can do it in one sitting, just depending on how much intention you have. Now, you're going to catapult back out of that non-dual consciousness because you have a body. And the body pulls us back into this plane because this is where we have to be, right? Because for whatever reason, we have to be here because we have a body. But once you know where that is, you can go in and you come out. You go in and you come out. And every time you go in, it changes you a little bit. And then degree by degree by degree, it turns you until you are completely reoriented in your life in a way that's more godlike and less caught up in the tumultuous phenomena of the world. You see,
That's
become
when you're
centered.
in the world, but not of it.
Exactly. Yep. This is a spiritual path, guys. This is how it happens. This is how it works. It's very easy. You know, Jesus said it is at hand. It's right within our grasp. And you don't have to be real special to have an experience of non-dual consciousness. I'm not a very special person. There are a lot of things I cannot do. I'm really suck at. Show me a spreadsheet and it kind of goes like this. I can't see it. I'm just one of those people. But I have experience, and I know that it's easily accessible. And if I can do it, I pretty much figure most people can, because it's not a matter of how intelligent you are. It's only a matter of how much intention you can bring to the project. How much do you want it, you see?
So, Michael, when you say go to the back of the head and then you go even further, a couple inches back, a few inches back, are you saying, obviously we're not talking about the physical place per se, but it's like the mental perception of that place? Is it how it's corresponding to how we would perceive it in our mind? And is this our center?
Well, it begins with the physical. I mean, the physical is the easiest way to attune yourself with it, because as above, so below, right? So
Right.
I have a ceiling fan in my living room here that has a chain that comes down, and I'm just the right height. So if I stand right under that chain and stand up real straight, I can feel that pendant on the end of that chain brush the crown of my head. And so what I did was I took a carpenter's plumb bob and I suspended it from that chain almost right down to the floor. And then I put a piece of blue tape and with a magic marker drew a dot right, so that if I stand right under that chain and I feel it right on the crown of my head, and the instep right in front of my heels, if I place my feet right there, I am standing perfectly vertical. Now, I don't know if you've ever tried anything like that before, but it makes me feel like I want to fall over backwards because I'm not used to standing vertically. I tend to lean forward into the world. And that's what we all do, because we're all always visually oriented and cognitively oriented into the world. We're not used to coming into perfect alignment with that perfectly vertical line. So I use that. I
Well,
do it. Yeah.
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. So if you do that and you find yourself vertical like that, you realize that this body and this attention and this mental panorama that you live with and call you, this is me, this is Jesse, this is Michael, This is Teresa. This is whoever. You know, you identify with the windshield rather than the pilot sitting in the seat. And so if you back up away from that, backing up and aligning yourself with true vertical is a physical way to bring you into a spiritual reality. Just like a yoga posture. It is a yoga posture, actually. But as you do it, and then you realize that you've got this field of energy right behind you, which is actually like the glow of the energy in your spinal cord, the Kundalini, the neural pathway that's all lit up all the time. That's actually behind you, and it's not cerebral. It's the back of the head. It's Eli, you know what I'm talking about? The cough, you know, the back of the head. That's why that's in the
Yes.
tarot that way, because it's like that. That's the more original part of our nervous system, from which all of this other has bloomed out of. But as it, you know, and I'm talking about the cerebrum, evolutionarily speaking, we began as that spinal cord and that brainstem, the cerebellum, the brainstem and the cerebellum, and then the cerebrum kind of blossomed out of that. But we got caught in the updraft, and now we're so totally engrossed in what the cerebrum deals with that we forget about this primal and original source of energy that we carry around with us every day. So in
Yeah, it's
order to
like-
get in touch with that, you have to back up into it.
For me, Jesse, I get it more from feeling my way back into it instead of trying to think about it. Although I can also visualize without intention, but just purely just feeling and visualizing myself at this place. The more we do that, the more it becomes perceptible to and to our awareness, or right. I'm not thinking about this so much as just doing it. That's how it is for me anyway. And it's kind of like in the Matrix, you know, where they're plugged in all down in the back, right? And but feeling that way, or
Yeah.
coming back.
This is going to feel a little weird.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I was saying.
I kind of got this visual that, you know, the physical plane, so to speak, is the outer surface, you can say. The where expression occurs, you know, so the face, so to speak, like so what's behind the face would be that which animates the face, you could say.
Like the
But,
Greek
you know,
actor, like the Greek actor with the persona.
right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not coming up with anything original here. I'm just working
No,
it out.
yeah, sure.
But so I think the temptation though is when you come up with practical meditation like this, at first, I'm always tempted to map it physically, you know, 3D land. But then it's like you kind of work through it and it's like, okay, we're not talking about a physical location. We're talking about a map, period, right? A map that can be used on other planes, maybe would be the way to think about it.
Yeah, but it's a
Well,
three-dimensional map. Think X, Y, and Z.
Right.
yeah.
3D maps
Yeah,
for other. Sorry, go ahead.
And also, Jesse, what we're looking at here too is the nature of ritual, which is combining the physical with the spiritual to do something in the physical world that resonates harmonically and geometrically, you know, whatever word you want to ascribe to it, something that mirrors the plane above it. That's the very nature of ritual itself.
Okay. Yeah.
So by sitting up straight, and this is yoga again, you know, sitting up straight, standing up straight, and backing up into it, becoming really vertical. That's like a yoga posture. And yoga is not just an exercise, you know. Those yoga asanas are designed the way they are to activate spiritual energies. And simply sitting up, standing up straight and erect, that's you're activating those energies, and it makes it easier to enter into that non-dual consciousness. But use the physicality of it, like, you know, you can locate it as a physical space behind you. Just imagine that it's a field of energy, like a column of light, like a glowing column of light, which is energy, something that is spinning so fast that it no longer appears to be spinning, it just is, right? That's right behind you, and you literally physically back up into it and feel it come into your being, and that will activate those energies in you. Just turn them all on, just boom, 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 without you having to know how or why.
I like the 3D map
Well,
analogy too. It really kind of
something
makes
else, Jesse, like a lot of the things that I've gone through were like naturally led by my internal dialogue and my just raw desire to want to know who I am and the meaning of everything. And I had to be okay with the fact that maybe I'm making all this up, right? Like all of this stuff I'm making up, but you know what? It's helping me. And then as I evolved more, I began to realize that, you know, whether I'm making it up or not, like it really became the story, the imagination, like Michael just said. You have to use your imagination to find your own path to the things that, you know, any of us might say. Like there's no way that you're going to follow exactly what any one of us say to find what we're trying to say, right? We're trying to bring it to life for you to find your way to that same place that we're describing or talking about, or you know, have experienced and are sharing. But at the end of the day, it's use these little pieces to create your own story about how you fall into, you know, self, so to speak.
if you're making it up, but as you make it up, it becomes a more and more refined point, then you know you're not really making it up. You're fine.
Exactly. I know I'm not, right? But I explain it to a lot of people, like, especially if I don't really know them, like, look, man, like I might be making this completely up. But at the end of the day, it's moving me forward in life. It's bringing greater understanding about who I am, and it's bringing greater understanding about God, like, however, about all of it, right? So, like, what does it matter if I'm making it up or not?
Right, right. Yeah, because that is
If
the
it's
temptation,
working,
right?
if it's working.
Yeah. Hmm.
Can I say something? This is amazing, Michael. This is truly amazing. You know, I teach meditation and I'm always telling people, get out of your mind, get down in your heart. But I've done every exercise that you've said here tonight, and I feel it and I see it, especially the one, you know, behind the back of the head. That stillness there is profound, but somehow I get it by going a different way. And you know, I've experienced the vastness of being in the soul, where it's just like, wow, it just opens up and there's like this huge vastness.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this is a very interesting, like everything you said works for me. And I'm like, this is really cool, because this is not the way I've been doing it. And I can see it, and really backing up into that. And the whole, you know, I'm thinking of it's just, I'm really blown away here. But the whole straightening your spine, and what it reminds me of is being a gymnast. I used to be a gymnast. And when you do that, like you just said, you feel it back right behind your head, that they're like, you know, you can feel that place there. But as a gymnast, you want to block out everything. You want to stop thinking, and your body knows what to do, type of thing. But you go into that place because you're so erect, so standing up, so straight, that you're backing into that place. That place, you know, wow, this is really cool. But
Yeah.
it's so weird, because that's not where I tell people to go when they meditate. I tell them totally get into your heart. That's where your soul, you know, like down into your heart region, you know, that where the soul is, that's where that vastness is, that's where you connect with God. But this is very different.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the column of light meditation that I do is once you get that vertical line of power in motion coming into you and through you, then these other centers in the body radiate out horizontally from there. And that's so the stronger this current, this central current, and the Hindus know about this, and yogis,
Yeah.
the central column of light is the Sushmana. They call it the Sushmana. And the caduceus, the ancient symbol of the caduceus, that's the central staff. That's where all the energy is coming down through. And as it descends, then it activates. It can activate here, it can activate here, here, solar plexus, belly button, genitals. It's all the way up and down. But the one thing that harmonizes them, you see, it's like a master current that harmonizes all the others, is that Sushmana current. So that's why we want to get this first. And then it's like seek the kingdom of heaven first. Then you can activate your heart. And the energy that then comes through your heart is cleaner, purer, less personal, more empathetic, more compassionate, all of the more connected. You see, the function of the heart and love is to connect us with the world and each other. So the more we turn up this, the more we amplify this, the more all of these other areas get amplified and harmonized.
Interesting. It's so cool. I'm blown away. I need to read more about this or get more on this. Where do I get it?
From me. I'm
you
the
write a
only
book?
source. Yeah, well, I have a course that'll come out. You have to buy it.
Cool.
You've committed. I've written your name down.
I'm very interested in that.
All right, good. I'm writing your name down right now.
Very cool. Thanks
Yeah.
for those exercises. Really neat. And the one about focusing on a dot on the ground, I've done that for a long time myself, like really trying to get a focus on something and just getting that. And I can relate to, everything you said was just amazing, but in a different way than I've approached it. Like working with horses, they have that skittish nature like a cat would. But there's a place you can go where they're totally calm around you and totally receptive. And it's cool. It's very neat.
Yeah.
So
see what they see, what animals see when they see us. If we're all in our heads and flitting around like that, they see us as erratic, unpredictable energy. So it's a danger. They don't like that. But when we calm down, then we get on the same wavelength and they're comfortable. They slide right in, right where we are.
when you're riding a horse, you do that same thing as you meld yourself with them, and you do it through your inner core, where you come so grounded between you and the horse that you become one. And it's that's a really cool place to get. And it's just like every little move and pressure and all that, and that's the whole purpose of it all. And that's working with that spiritual animal that they are, as we are.
Yeah. So when you move, the horse's legs become your legs.
Yeah. That's very cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. I want to thank all of you for all of your input. This is really great, and it's very helpful for me. It gives me a lot to work with because, there's so much here potentially that it's too much for one person to organize. And my whole purpose is to organize it in such a way that it makes it not just easier, but exponentially easier. Because the world right now needs people who are awake. Really, really does. We're kind of in a crucial crunch. We're in a crunch right now as far as the history of humanity goes. We really need to step up and be awake and be aware and to allow divine energy to come down through us and radiate out into the world. We don't have to understand everything that's going on, but we must approach the throne of God, approach the throne of God and say, hey, we need some help here. I don't know what's needed, but you do. Let it happen, like right now. If there's ever a time to get into God's face, it's now. So do it. All right. Well, have a great evening.
you.
Does anybody have anything else, burning question or something you want to say? If not, I thank you very
Thanks.
much for being here. It's always a pleasure and look forward to doing it again.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Enjoyed it.
Awesome
Yeah.
class.
Thanks,
Thank
Wes.
Likewise.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.